Hi there, Logic Language Learners. So first things first, yes, I am sitting here wearing a Marvel bathrobe. We've got plumbers and workmen in and the water was off and I'm waiting to have a shower. But this is a video that I really wanted to do because it keeps coming up and yeah, I'm trying to keep to a schedule. So this is a video all about the different uses and ways you can use before and after in French, which is more complicated than you give it credit for because it's quite easy in English. If you find this free content useful, please do remember me. There's my coffee link underneath and you could buy me a coffee. It's only a couple of dollars, a couple of pounds, and I really appreciate it. It really helps. So let's quickly talk about before and after. So first things first, before and after in English are very easily slipped into the conversation. We sometimes use afterwards and beforehand if there's nothing else coming after those words. So for example, I finished it beforehand or I finished it afterwards, but that's less and less common in modern usage, particularly in the States. But the fact is, albeit correct, so the fact is generally we can use before with either the gerund, which is the ing, before a noun, which is a thing, or before a person doing something. So before my departure, before leaving, before I leave, yeah, or before I left. The same with afterwards. After lunch, after having lunch, or after he ate lunch. I mean, it doesn't matter which way round you're doing it. The three possibilities: following it with an ing, following it with a noun, following it with somebody doing a verb. We can use the same word in English. Avant, before and after. Now, let's look what happens in French. So if you are using before a noun and after a noun, life is simple. Before Christmas, which is one of the few nouns which doesn't have the word the, so before Christmas, avant Noël. After Christmas, après Noël. Before my departure, avant mon départ. D-E acute, P-A-R-T. After my arrival, après mon arrivée. After my arrival. This makes sense. This is actually quite a sneaky way of getting round some of the grammatical issues that we're about to encounter. So for example, if you're panicking, as you will, when you realise how we actually need to say before somebody does something, using a noun is quite easy. So before they won, rather than start worrying about the grammar, before their victory or something, you could use a noun and it's quite a useful way round that problem, all right? Not that I'm saying you won't be able to do it, but I'm just saying the noun is a useful get out, okay? So avant and après are our basic words. A-P-R-E with a grave S, okay? So, if we then use before doing or after doing, okay? So you'd say this in English. So before speaking to Luke or after speaking to Luke. Before going to work or after going to work. When you use before or after with an ing, yeah, in English, you have two very distinct ways of doing this in French. You are going to use an infinitive on the auxiliary verb. So before speaking is avant. Sorry, I apologise. On the before, you're going to use an infinitive on the main verb, and on the after, you're going to use an infinitive on the auxiliary verb. But either way, you're going to use a two form. Either way, you're going to use a two form. So before speaking, avant de parler. A-V-A-N-T-D-E, parler. P-A-R-L-E-R. All right, the infinitive. Before going, avant d'aller, it will join. Before deciding, avant de décider. So you are going to go before plus the word de plus your infinitive. Now if you have a pronoun, that's no problem. You know the rules, bits before verbs, except before infinitive. So before speaking to him, avant de lui parler. Avant de vous parler. Avant de leur, donner. It wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. You would need to use the avant plus the de plus the infinitive. Okay, so that method is useful. So before speaking to him, notice that anybody can then come next. So for example, before speaking to him, Luke did this. Or before speaking to him, Craig will do this. Notice any tense can follow this and any person. It's a very useful phrase. The same with the before. So before speaking, after speaking, it could be followed by any tense or any person. So after speaking, Luke went for dinner. After speaking, Luke will go for dinner, whatever. And this is going to be après plus the auxiliary verb in the infinitive avoir, or the auxiliary verb in the infinitive être, plus a past tense. Now, be careful because your past tense is going to sound like the infinitive sometimes. So, for example, if it were, I apologise, we've got workmen in. So, after eating is après avoir mangé, and I will pop some of these examples beneath. So, after eating, in effect, you're sort of saying after to have eaten, after having eaten. Après avoir mangé, or if after leaving, if it were an être verb, après être parti. So your verb will still be avoir, your verb will still be être, but you will categorically use après avoir, après être, plus your past tense. Now again, same rules. If you've got a pronoun that needs to go in here, you know the rules. Pronouns go before the infinitive. If you've got an infinitive, the pronoun will go before the infinitive. So if I had after eating, après avoir mangé, try and remember the après avoir, try and remember the link. After eating it, après l'avoir mangé. And I will write these examples underneath. After speaking to him, après lui avoir parlé. So you're going to pop the pronoun, the same pronouns you would use normally, before the infinitive. So in other words, before dancing, avant de danser, infinitive. After dancing, après avoir dansé. Before reading it, avant de le lire. After reading it, après l'avoir lu. Okay? So that's the method that will be used with an ing. Next method. When you use before and then a named or a noun or anything, somebody doing something, or when you say after and then a named person or a noun, somebody doing something, you need to bring in the word que. Absolutely. So for example, if you said before I leave, you need to go avant que, new word, je, and then the grammar we're going to talk about. If you said after I leave or after I left, après que, and then the grammar that I'm going to talk about, you would need the que. Now this seems odd, but this is a very, very, very common thing in French. There's lots of expressions where we will add a que to a word that wouldn't normally have a que. So for example, during, pendant, so during Christmas, pendant Noël, whilst I was studying, or during the time I was studying, pendant que j'étudiais, or je faisais mes études. Lors is at the time of, lors de mon arrivée, at the time of my arrival, lorsque, yeah, I was arriving. Peut-être, peut-être que, yeah, you always need to use a que, you often need to use a que if you've then got somebody doing something, alright? And this kind of links to my decisions of am I using qui or que in a relative pronoun? You know, the man that I love, l'homme que je, you know, a new person coming in after a que. So in other words, we're now in a situation where we've got avant que and après que. Okay, now, here is the way that it works. Okay, avant que will always take the subjunctive. Always. Always, 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 always. Whether you are saying before I do something that is yet to happen, or whether it is before I did something that has already happened, that by definition feels a little bit more definite, but it will always just be grammatically the subjunctive. Okay? So, it will also contain in fully correct French, okay, a little ne. a little ne. This doesn't mean that the whole thing is negative, okay? This doesn't mean that the whole thing is negative at all. You just need to use this ne. Now, this ne, in my opinion, is a ne that is probably going to vanish from French in the next 50 years, if I'm honest, okay? If I'm really honest, it will probably it'll probably be on its way out. I'm just trying to find I've done a video on that before. I'm just trying to find you that. So in other words, avant que will definitely take the subjunctive, and more than likely, to be fully correct, will have the ne, although sometimes conversationally this is forgotten. So if you don't know what the subjunctive is and you've arrived at this part of the video, then obviously please watch my videos on the subjunctive. I will pop the links underneath, or please purchase my podcast, which will go over it in 4 minutes, and I will pop the links to those underneath in the description. So for example, before I do it, avant que je le fasse, but strictly avant que je ne le fasse. Avant que je ne le fasse. Before I leave. So, avant que je ne parte. Avant que je ne parte. Avant que je ne parte. So you are going to use the subjunctive, but avant que, then the person, then the ne, then either the pronoun if there's one there, and then the verb. So let's do another one. Before he arrives, avant qu'il n'arrive. Or avant qu'il arrive orally, but I really like the use of the ne here. Okay? This ne is not making it negative. I will attach a link onto what this ne is underneath. Before he left, so in other words, if you have an auxiliary as well, so he left avant qu'il ne soit parti. So you can use the past tense in the subjunctive, and I will attach the video for that. So for example, he left, il est parti, or he ate, il a mangé. I'm happy he ate, I'm happy he left. Je suis content qu'il ait mangé, A-I-T. Je suis content qu'il soit parti, S-O-I-T. That's the perfect subjunctive. That's the subjunctive in the past. If you guys don't know that, the link will be underneath, or I strongly recommend the purchase of the podcast because it explains it to you in 4 minutes. So those of you that know how to use the subjunctive in the past, if you had before he finished, avant qu'il ait fini, it will basically take the subjunctive with avant que, regardless of whether it has happened or it's about to happen. Okay? Après que is a different story. Now, après que is one of these weird things where very commonly in French, people will forget the subjunctive, but very commonly here, French speakers will make this subjunctive. And strictly speaking, it is not subjunctive. Strictly speaking, après que should not be subjunctive. It should be either a future tense, so either future or the anterior future, so that means he will do something or he will have done something. Or if an event has already happened, it will use an indicative tense. So an indicative means non-subjunctive. So for example, if it's after he leaves, talking about something that hasn't yet, it will need to be après qu'il partira, or après qu'il aura, so après qu'il sera parti, or after he eats, après qu'il mangera, after he will eat, or après qu'il aura mangé. That, strictly speaking, is the tense you should use for after, but something that hasn't happened yet. If it's after he ate, après qu'il a mangé. But you will get you will get huge swathes of the French population who say après qu'il ait mangé using the subjunctive past. Or particularly referring to the future. So if it's like after he has finished, because it's hypothetical yet he hasn't done it, you will get large amounts of the French population saying après qu'il ait fini. So it's almost become one of those things that's almost seen as correct, and it almost sounds wrong when you do the correct version and use the indicative. But formally, and I will attach links underneath, the Voltaire Project is a great grammar debate, top linguists, top grammaticians, but that is the case. So what does this mean for us? This means then if we've got sentences like before I leave, let's look at the possibilities. So avant de partir, before leaving, but notice with that you would then definitely need the person coming next. Yeah, so before I leave, avant de partir,